let's just start with this. So,
Okay.
cousin Sal. So
Yeah.
he's now a a very respected, noteworthy gaming voice. When you guys were like 14, did you ever think he's going to matter in the gaming industry in America?
We didn't even know there was a gaming industry in America. But I will tell you this about Cousin Sal. He was selling parlay cards when he was in like junior high school. He was really, his gambling career started flipping baseball cards. Most kids will flip baseball cards and it's like, yeah, all right, yeah, I want. He would not stop flipping baseball cards. You remember that, flipping baseball cards? Would you do that?
Yeah, but no, I'm from rural America. Who would I flip them to? Like you guys,
Right.
did you grow up in the city?
We grew up, Sal's in Long Island. I moved out to Las Vegas from Brooklyn when I was 9 years old. I would spend the summers with Sal, or he'd come spend the summers with me. We'd play Stratomatic baseball. He was just always really interested in numbers. He would, like when he'd come to visit us, he'd make a list of every item in his luggage and have to check off each item. And in fact, they lost his luggage. And the people at the airline said, is there anything in your bag that might be unusual, that might be something that would stand out? And he said, yes, here's the whole list of every single thing in my... Yeah, it's like OCD turned into gambling.
Well, he's very bright, guys. I mean, I always have this kind of thing. I think comedians are all bright. I mean, an actor has good-looking parents and the cheekbones line up. But a comedian, you write your shit, you get one chance to perform it. You are judged harshly live. And I've always felt like comedies don't get, like I remember watching, was it called 40-Year-Old Virgin? And I remember telling a friend, that was as good a movie and as hard a movie to pull off as I'd ever seen. I think Steve Carell is a prime example. I look at him and I think, shit, Jimmy, he may be as talented as anybody in Hollywood.
Oh, no question about it. It's funny that you have more emphasis put on the dramatic actors when let's see some of them try to be funny. Whereas you can see Steve Carell is, and he's done it, is a real actor. I mean, he's talented. Yeah. And comedy, as far as comedians go, now, make no mistake, there are some dumb ones, but there aren't many. There are some, though, but it's pretty rare. You do have to have something going on. And even some of the guys that seem like they're dumb, most of those guys are among the smarter types.
Well, it's funny. Like when I listen to Seinfeld, whose backstory's interesting, I look at him and Jay Leno as joke constructors. It's almost mechanical. It's not ironic. They both love cars. They are great constructors of jokes. And then there's other comedians. Richard Pryor, to me, was just so damn naturally funny.
Right.
Right. Like
Tracy Morgan is not paying careful attention to the detail in his joke, but he's always very funny. Well, I think Seinfeld, though, to say he's to pigeonhole him like that isn't. I actually had Seinfeld on the show, and I'd been watching a basketball game, and I said, he reminds me of Steph Curry because he does all the basics so spectacularly well. And he's just like loose, and he plays when he does stand up with a flow. Or this material is all prepared. It is not off the cuff. There's nothing rough about it. And yet it doesn't feel like it's scripted. It just flows. And that's one of the things, especially like with your radio show, that when there's a flow, that's when it went well. When it's starting and stopping, it's like, you didn't have chemistry or somebody didn't do a good job.
Where was the first time, Jimmy, you were at a club and either before or after, or perhaps just watching, you were like, oh, wow, that's like a craftsman. Like, that's brilliant.
At a comedy club, I used to come to LA when I was growing up, living in Vegas. I would come to LA and I'd go to the Improv. Yeah. And I'd see all these comics that I knew from Letterman. And some of these guys never really became household names, but to me, They were really big stars. I remember seeing Dave Attell once up in San Francisco and really laughing so hard that I was almost incapacitated. It was just like this guy is just, every bit of him is funny. His material is funny. His voice is, everything about him is funny. And he just destroyed that night. And that one is someone that stands out.
Somebody I knew once was at the Comedy Store with Jim Carrey, and I think he had to follow him. Jim was really young, and he's like, "How do you follow like Plastic Man? How do you follow like Jim's stuff was so raw and new?" I've seen some tapes of Carrey, and I'm like, "Good God, it's a
he's not
tsunami.
even he's in just a different category. You can't even really
Exactly.
call him a stand-up comedian. He's like it's like he's like every once in a while there are these keyboard players, and some of them are great, and you're like, oh, this guy is great, and I'm really enjoying this music, I'm really connecting with it. And then there are keyboard players who are like there for a keyboard player, like they're just beyond. It's almost you can't even relax and listen to them because it's so dazzling and it's so musical. And Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, these guys are. They are. I don't even know if you can call them stand-up comedians. They're just like they're more like musicians, just jamming or something.
Yeah, it's like Russell Westbrook. Somebody said the other day, he's just a spectacle. I don't know what to do. He's a guard that can't shoot, and he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a spectacle. You can't. Iverson, to a large degree, you had to build a team kind of around him. He didn't fit into stuff. And in the end, you were just like, he confused Jordan. Jordan struggled to guard him. And I don't know if he was a winning basketball player, but you're like, Robin Williams is like that. It would probably be hard to be on the set with Robin, to share the stage with Robin. Like he was so gifted, you had to kind of move out of the way and let it happen, maybe.
Yeah, it's like being on stage with Prince. It's like you're not going to step into the spotlight and take a solo.
I've had one awkward interview in my career, Jim Harbaugh. It was awful. It was, oh God, it was awful.
Well,
Jim.
he seems like such a charming man. I'm shocked by that. That's really surprising to me. I would think he would really shine.
But have you ever been on the set and thought, oh, good hell, I'm not sure where this is going?
Ever been? It happens every week.
But it's hard, right? These are actors, and you may not deeply care about, like, do you have to fake it?
Yeah, well, I'm always interested in everyone, and it's a funny thing because I talk to the audience during the commercial breaks back when we used to have audiences in our building, and I love talking to them, and I am genuinely curious, and I don't think you can do this job without, I think you are genuinely curious, and we're seeing that right now. You can't do this job without that. So it is up to me to find something interesting to talk to that person about. When they're not interested in necessarily answering questions, and the worst is when they start mentioning people that no one in the audience knows by their first name, or somebody who's some kind of like AD that is known in Hollywood and not known anywhere else, and you're just like, hey, come on now, we're trying to communicate with the viewers at home. We're let's not exclude them by mentioning people that nobody knows and talking about things that nobody understands. Let's try to remember that they're here. We're not just having a conversation at dinner.
You talk to the audience during the break, Jimmy. I don't think everybody does that.
I love it. It's my favorite part of the show. I'm not sure really, because I've never really. I've been on Colbert's show, and I don't think I was even paying attention to whether he spoke to the audience. I used to talk to the audience before the show for a long time. And Don Rickles was on my show one night. It was the first time he was on, and I was out there talking to the audience. I basically warmed them up myself. And afterwards, he's like, let me give you some advice. He said, the first time they see you speak should be when the cameras are rolling on TV. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll give that a try. And he was totally right. It's basic show business. The first time they see, when you talk to them, they're pretending when you walk out and they clap, because it's the second time they've seen you. So it's the reason why I don't talk to the guests on the show before the show, because I don't want to have I don't want to start the interview on a fake note by going, hey, how you doing? Like, I already know how they're doing. I just saw them 25 minutes ago. So this first time I will see them is when they walk out on the stage.
It's interesting. I didn't think I thought Leno was always, and I don't mean to make anybody uncomfortable, kind of a clunky interviewer. He was a comedian. That was not his natural thing. You've been on radio shows, morning shows. Your chemistry is excellent. You've been in banter with multiple people. You've interviewed people. Your sports background actually, I think, is an asset. You're not just a comedian. You've been on The Man Show, morning radio in LA. If you ever thought to yourself, I think of you, Jimmy, as a broadcaster.
That is what I am. And in fairness to Jay Leno, if I were to decide to do stand-up, I would be terrible at it. It would take me a long time to get good at it. But that's what I started on the radio, and I never intended to be a stand-up comic, and I never imagined I would be the host of a talk show. I was just always the character, kind of the side guy. On Kevin and Bean, a morning show on K-Rock here in L.A. I worked there. I did sports for 5 years, and I was a character. I had like a thick New York accent. I exaggerated, and it never occurred to me that I'd be doing anything like this. And if you watch those early shows, you can see that I was absolutely terrible at it.
No. I watched early. I watched PTI early. With Tony. Tony was orange back there. He didn't get the makeup initially. And Mike. And they say their show was terrible. No, it wasn't terrible because they were both interesting people. Your show wasn't terrible. It wasn't as refined. You were like you were like a really talented chef. You just didn't have the foie gras. It was a little runny. It wasn't quite right. But
the meatballs were raw in the middle, and I was throwing them at people. Throwing them at their heads.
When you guys are searching for, because I do about 2 hours prep every morning just to kind of get the show ramped up. I want to take the audience somewhere. When you're sitting kind of in the room, isn't a Sherbet guy better for you? Do you look for writers that fill in blanks for you that are like what works with you?
Yes. I love one of the things that I read about 30, 40 pages of material every morning, and the writers they'll write stuff, and then I whittle it down, and then I make it into a monologue. I actually type it out, and make it into a monologue. But what I love is, and I mostly get this from female writers, is when I find out about something I didn't know anything about. Like, my wife is a writer on the show, and I learned that she, and then it turns out many other women, will buy an outfit and then wear it, and if they get no comments on it, positive, return it, which is completely bonkers to me. It's something that I never would have known in my life. I just can't even imagine doing something like that. I think it might be illegal. And I find out about these things from different, now from younger people. You learn about. I always like seeing what's going on with this online dating. I'm always curious as to just how it works, how you say goodbye to somebody, how do you, what these dates are like. I love learning this stuff. So we do try to have a variety of voices when it comes to gender, age, and race. So that's important to me because the audience is mixed. So I don't want everything, and everything does come from my point of view, obviously, but sometimes I'll go, did you know that, some women do this? That's the way I look at it.
Every day. So it's very easy. I come in, I do prep, do the show, off at noon, play tennis. It's an easy life. I mean, I just think your preparation is probably much more intense than the guy at home thinks. They think Jimmy comes in, they got writers, it's a couple of quick jokes. The process for you, can it be daunting? Does it take the funny out of the funny?
There's no tennis for me, that's for sure. There's no time for me to do anything. I'm obsessed with the show. I just think that I know that you have to keep feeding this monster, and you can never come up with enough. You do a show every day, and it's going to be as good as you make it. And of course, some of it is just left to chance, but it's going to be as good as you make it, especially when it comes to the monologue. So I really don't stop working on it ever. I'm always thinking about it, always working on it. Even when I'm watching a game or watching a TV show or something, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm sure you do this. And I know you say you go play tennis or whatever, but I know that it's much more than that, because there's no way you could do it this well if you weren't thinking about any of this stuff. You come in with observations and things you want to talk about, and it's just a muscle that you always have to exercise. Most people can just relax and watch TV, and when you do this like we do, you can't. Well, unless you want to be bad at it, but you can't do that.
Jimmy, you know what I do? I prepare for an hour and a half show, and I found it early in my career that I was a little paralyzed on notes. So I create an hour and a half, and then I want to force myself to fill in some of the canvas. And I find that nervous energy makes me funnier. Do you go in with so I kind of feel like I got 12 minutes to fill here. I got to figure it out. And I think I tend to be a little funnier when I'm desperate. Or do you ever go into a segment and think, I've watched some old Doc Severinsen and Johnny Carson bits. The Thanksgiving one's legendary. And I think, shit, was that all scripted? Or was there just something to nervous energy there? Do you ever have moments where you think, God, the show, it's not great. And in fact, it forces you, the anxiety forces you into a great show.
A couple of things do. In the guest segments primarily, because the monologue it's written, the monologue is written, and there are moments of where I'll chat with Guillermo, or if I need to stretch a little bit because time is important. But the monologue is mostly predetermined. But in the guest segments, what I try to do is go in with a plan. These are some things we can talk about. And the best case scenario for me is if we don't talk about any of those things. I know I have them to fall back on, but I want it to be natural and I want it to flow. And most of the time it does. And that's the difference between me, the first 5 years of the show and now. Like the first 5 years of the show, there were definitely some home run moments, some grand slam moments, maybe even, but there were also a lot of pop flies, and so the show is more consistent now, and I know what to do, and also just like there's a respect level, and I'm sure you felt this from the athletes, etc., that you interview, is like when they know who you are, they care more. They answer your questions in maybe a more honest or thoughtful way. Whereas I had times on my show where I was interviewing a guest and the guest wasn't even listening to me and had turned around to talk to the other guest sitting on the couch. And where I felt like, oh, this is what it's like at parties where I can't get anyone to even listen to me.
When did you find your voice, though? Like your comedic tone? It wasn't your first day on the air. Was there a Zen moment for you and you thought driving home thinking, you know what, man, this is what I am and I'm proud of it and I'm good at it?
It was just very gradual, really. It wasn't, and it's always changing. When I started, it was all, I would throw bombs. I did the Man Show and I did, as a sports guy, and, I said crazy stuff a lot of times, and I was looking for an explosion, because I wasn't the main guy. When you are the main guy, you can't really do that. If I'm sure I'm dating myself too much, but like if Jim Ignatowski was the star of Taxi, it wouldn't necessarily have been a popular show. Maybe I can come up with a more current reference. No, I can't. But you know what I'm saying? It's like You have to, when you play the role of the main guy, you have to be a little bit more even-keeled.
We both know Bill Simmons well. You know him better than I do. He used to write for your show. He said he left it on his terms. Be honest. It was one of those, listen, we're going to fire you. Why don't you say that? So you know what?
I'll tell you what really happened. It was an interesting situation because Bill I read his writing and I was a fan of his, and I read him for probably a year, never discussed it with anyone. And then I sent him an email because he wrote about me, and it was very complimentary, and I was like, oh wow, he wrote about me. And I sent him an email and said, hey, I've been reading your stuff for over a year, and I think you're really funny. And we exchanged emails, and then I don't know, maybe a year and a half later, I got the show, and I really felt like Bill's approach to sports writing was what I wanted to do on my show. Whether it's kind of a pop culture mix of news and sports and all the things that I was interested in. And so I hired him. I actually flew him and his wife out. I picked them up at the airport in my old crappy Jeep Wagoneer, and they were impressed by me pretending to be down to earth in my Wagoneer. And so I made a good impression on them and hired Bill. Now, Bill hadn't been making much money in Boston, and then he comes out to work for me at ABC, and he's making a pretty good living. But ESPN, now he's working part-time for them, starts to say, hey, we want more of you. And I got in a situation where I was almost in a bidding war against ESPN. I mean, Bill didn't play it like that. Finally, it got to the point, ESPN, where they made it a dumb decision for Bill not to leave, but they basically bought him from me. You know, they paid him so much money that he couldn't stay.
How do you ensure your writers are happy? Awards mean a lot to them. Not saying they don't for Jimmy Kimmel, but you are luxuriously paid and you are the face of the franchise. How do you make sure writers feel appreciated?
I think it's really simple. As if something is funny, acknowledging that they did is funny. And believe me, I could do a much better job of that. But because this is like a shark, it's always moving forward. But they know when I get if they get a big laugh, that's really your reward as a writer, besides getting paid. But just getting a big laugh is a great reward.
Okay, naive question, really dorky, only a couple more left. I always thought if I did this show, I wouldn't want to show a preference. So I would want all the jokes to be sent to me anonymously. Mm-hmm. So because if I thought somebody was funny, I would start leaning into them thinking, well, Bob or Jane gives me the best jokes. How do you not start going to somebody over and over again? Because you go out one night and Jane has 2 jokes and they both kill. The next day you're going to think, I'm going to listen to Jane. Jane jokes kill. She's got,
Well, my daughter's name is Jane, and you're right. The Jane jokes do kill. She drew a picture of her brother's penis yesterday. That is
great.
It is going to be cherished for many, many generations of Kimmels. But it goes the other way. I sometimes feel like if somebody isn't getting jokes on, I'll look at their jokes a little bit harder than I would somebody who's getting a lot of jokes on. And, you can sometimes breeze by stuff that's good and miss it. So I think that I go the other way. I also have developed this weird, I could tell you with probably 85% accuracy which of my writers wrote which joke, because I know their styles. It's almost like handwriting to me now. I know the subjects. I know their kind of go-to keywords. I know their areas of interest. And I really could tell you with stunning accuracy who wrote what.
You're one of the good guys in the business. It's funny. I'm a sports guy who wanted to be Johnny Carson, but knew I wasn't funny enough. You are a funny guy. Let me guess, you looked at Bob Costas, but you knew you couldn't do baseball good enough. How did it work for you? Who were your influences?
I loved Bob Costas when I was a kid. I still love Bob Costas.
I did an hour with him 2 weeks ago. It was as much fun. I love Bob.
I had dinner with Al Michaels and Bob Costas one night, and it was just the best. I mean, they have just stories and stories and stories, and I love baseball, and I love hearing that stuff. Bob also, I remember when I really became enamored with Bob Costas was when he was on Letterman doing play-by-play for the elevator races they had.
Yes.
And I was like, that guy's funny. And the other guy was Vince McMahon. So Bob was on one end and Vince McMahon was on the other end. And Letterman relentlessly goofed on Vince. And Bob was just so straight, and he didn't try to get the laughs. They just came to him because he got it. He knew what his role was there. And I think his interviews, I think he's one of the best. When he did that show on NBC, he's one of the best. The extent of his knowledge is dazzling to me.
Yeah, he did an interview with it was like a 4-parter with Don Rickles. I've told Bob this. It's the best thing he's ever done. I don't care about the Olympics. I don't care about baseball. I don't care about the NBA Finals. I've told him. Richard Lewis is hard to interview. He is.
It's funny. You mentioned Richard Lewis. I remember Richard Lewis being so hilariously angry because they had to scrap an episode he did with Bob because Bob was laughing too much.
And he came on, and Lewis came on the next interview and said, so I was simply too funny as a comedian.
That is a nightmare. I mean, really, that is a nightmare. I just did something with this website, and I was goofing on the guy while he was trying to read the intro, and it was funny. And they're like, "Okay, let's try that again." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought we were supposed to be having fun." I hate when producers start. They're supposed to produce, not do the opposite. I hate when they get in the way of what's funny just because it's clunky. It could still be funny if it's clunky.
Did you see when Norm Macdonald had David Spade in his show, and Spade crushed for 12 minutes, and he goes, "We haven't been taping this." And of course they had. Spade was apoplectic. He just, what's the point? I can't duplicate it. Hey, listen, you're one of the all-time great guys.
Same with you, Colin. I listen to you, and I think you are great. And congratulations on your new thing, and I hope it goes fantastically well.
Good luck to you and your fam, buddy.
You too. Take care.